One of the things that caught my attention early in my childhood was Star Trek. I was captivated by the idea of interstellar travel, exploring space, discovering new and interesting things. It wasn't until I got older that I learned how difficult that kind of travel could be to achieve. It isn't just the power required, it's the physics that have to be addressed. Even sublight travel by impulse power raises some daunting engineering and physical consequences. I'm far from the only one to take an interest in this subject. Physicist Lawrence Krauss is intrigued by it as well and lists the hurdles that we have to overcome in the physics of Star Trek. And the problem of impulse drive and the visually rapid acceleration is what we'll be talking about today. The impulse drive is used for sublight speed travel in the Star Trek universe. It uses the energy produced from fusion to push gases and radiation away from the ship to produce thrust. Since there's no real resistance from friction in space, this works effectively and keeps the fuel demand low, an important aspect of space travel since fuel is very heavy. There's apparently some difference in top impulse speeds, which we'll cover later, but they seem to top out at about a quarter of light speed on larger starships, which is over 74,000 kilometers a second. Fast enough to reach the moon in about 5 seconds, which is over 384,000 kilometers away. So what's the problem here? Well, acceleration and inertia are the main problems here. Inertia is the tendency of an object to resist changes in direction or velocity. We experience this every day on Earth. When your car accelerates, you are pulled along with it, but your body resists the change, and as a result, you are pushed back into your seat. A slow and gradual acceleration makes the whole process less noticeable, but the opposite is also true, as most of us know when our bodies try to keep going when we slam on the brakes. Once your body adjusts to the velocity, you'll be fine. But therein lies the problem: g-forces. G being a measurement of normal Earth gravity, so 2g is twice of Earth's gravity. Humans can generally take right around 4 Gs without training before passing out. Fighter pilots can push that to 7 or even 9 Gs, but moving from 0 to a quarter of light speed in even a few seconds puts enough g-force on your body to make your eyes become instantly acquainted with the back of your skull. Interstellar travel kind of goes out the window if you die before you can get anywhere. Now, force equals mass times acceleration. The average human mass is in at around 80 kilos, or about 176 pounds. Going to full impulse in a second puts 5.92 million newtons of force on you. For perspective, that's almost 6 of these boulders on your body. That bad boy is around 9 feet tall. So how do we deal with this issue given our current tech? Well, unfortunately, all we can currently do is accelerate slower. Doesn't make for thrilling travel, but it is what it is. In the Star Trek universe, they have a fix for that, though: inertial dampeners. These devices shield the crew from the stresses of acceleration and maneuvering that they are shown to do. In my mind, with the ability to generate artificial gravity like they do, and with warp capability, something we'll cover another time, you could conceivably create an isolated pocket which encompassed the ship to cancel ship movement affecting the crew. Done properly, you could prevent Sir Isaac Newton from literally kicking your ass. It would probably function like a system I worked on when I was an active duty Marine. See, helicopters are pretty sensitive to air currents, and keeping them in a stable and steady hover is really a pain in the ass. But there is an automatic flight control system designed to combat this problem in hover and in flight. Basically, the system detects the motion of the aircraft, and it also detects the inputs of the pilot on the pitch, roll, and yaw channels. If the aircraft moves and the pilot did not input that movement into the controls, the system detects it, actuates the control linkages, and puts it back where it was. Such a system in a starship would account for the visible shock of movement we see from weapons impact, as it would be taking readings from the helm and adjusting from the impacts with a slight gap between movement and correction. It would have to respond incredibly fast, realistically faster than anything we have today, and employ connection speeds we simply cannot achieve now. Without that, even a sudden, momentary gap in that protection offered by the inertial dampers would be fatal. The only real way to make this work is for the sensors to tie in and predict impact, timing, and the associated shock to actuate the system when it happens. So, what would this system have to do in order to work? I mentioned earlier that a starship has the ability to generate artificial gravity. There's a kind of plating used on the floors of these ships to generate gravity, which can be adjusted as needed. Tuvok adjusted the gravity of an entire deck up 10% on Voyager, a dick move, and Deep Space Nine had a visiting officer from a species that had evolved in microgravity, and as a result had to have her quarters gravity settings dropped way down. This ability to manipulate gravitational forces would be an ideal way to deal with the stresses both on the crew and the ship itself. See, in this case, one might think that the answer would be that something needs to push the crew in a given direction, but the ship is already doing that. Instead, the system would have to pull in an equal and opposite manner on literally every atom on, in, and in the immediate vicinity of the ship, ideally everywhere the shields would normally extend to. This pull would cancel out the push of the ship, equalizing the forces and keeping the ship and crew whole. Yes, even the ship would have to be protected from these forces because those 6 boulders I mentioned earlier are being applied to virtually every square inch of the ship as well, and would cause bits of it to twist and buckle under the torque. If the ship itself isn't shielded, it would be torn apart, and you'd see nacelles and sections of the ship just flying off from the stresses involved. Now, there is one more thing I want to cover about the impulse drive. The top speed of a ship under impulse power is kind of nonsensical. As I said, the impulse drive is said to propel the ship at a quarter of light speed on the larger vessels, and it's implied to be a hard limit. That wouldn't be the case, actually. See, there isn't any kind of real resistance in space once you leave the gravitational influence of a planet or a star. There isn't any air resistance like aircraft have to deal with, and running into a few atoms of gases and some space dust at non-relativistic speeds isn't going to slow you down much. Due to the lack of friction, realistically, starships could continually accelerate to a pretty decent percentage of flight speed, which makes me think the top speed is a speed based on what the shields can safely deal with when encountering gases and space dust. They make it look easy, but traveling through space is very dangerous. Without proper shielding, a sand grain-sized piece of debris can hit with the power of a low-yield nuke, like the one that was tested in World War II. The background radiation would have to be dealt with as well, since even modest sublight speeds can expose you to enough radiation to kill you in short order. Because of that, I don't think it's so much a hard limit as much as it is a safe operating speed that can be pushed if need be, but isn't recommended due to the danger of the shields not being able to handle the additional stresses of impacts and radiation as well as they otherwise would be able to. Now, the shields are a topic we will cover next time on the series that I'm calling The Final Frontier.